What's up, everyone? As many of you may know, last month in October was Mental Health Month, and because this is really well aligned with what we do at Alive in relation to the promotion of mental health awareness and also the promotion of mental wellness overall, I thought I'd make a video that sort of sums up a bit of the flavor of what Mental Health Month was all about. So let's get into that now. Alright, so Mental Health Month is essentially an entire month dedicated to activating, educating and engaging with Australians when it comes to their own mental wellness and the mental wellness of others. So today we're going to give you a bit of an overview of what the mental health picture looks like in Australia, especially given this year and COVID-19 and some of the context around the challenges we've all been facing. Then we're going to move to a section that's about how we can best check in with our own mental wellness when it comes to times like these. And then we're going to move into some of the more practical tips that we can actually do to boost our own mental wellness, such as looking at creating a purpose and setting goals, and then also looking at some of the psychology of both behavior and behavioral change, and look at some cool habits that we can use every day to actually boost our own mental wellness. So the first thing that's worth mentioning when it comes to mental health is just how common and pervasive the issue actually is. This sounds really negative, but it has a little bit of a positive spin to it. There's really no need for a stigma when it's so common and widespread in our society. If we're all occasionally going through this together, then why is there a stigma at all? It's just a fact of life, and honestly, it's just something we all deal with. We can't feel our best all the time. We all feel bad sometimes. We're not machines. That's just not how it works. So you can see the stats on the left there show you that actually 1 in 5 Australians experience a mental health condition every year, the most common of which are in the screen, and you can see that these actually occur in combination often, which really makes the issue even worse for people. You can see on the right hand side there that the stats over an entire lifetime are even more alarming. Over an entire lifetime, almost half of Australians actually experience a mental health condition, and this is only the Australians that actually come forward and sort of get diagnosed and get treatment, and unfortunately you can see down the bottom there, over half of us actually don't. So this is only those that are diagnosed and those that have an issue that's severe enough to be classified as a condition, not the less severe issues that everyone may be facing day to day and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, this trend has sort of been trending up over the last 2 decades. This is why I'm so passionate about this issue. Despite the enormous technical and economic progress that we've made over the last 2 decades, we're still really suffering when it comes to our own foundational health and happiness. And unfortunately, we're so focused on material pursuits sometimes, and to me that just doesn't seem relevant if we don't have that foundation of happiness and we're not satisfied in enjoying that progress anyway. So jumping into the COVID-19 context, you can see that isolation and uncertainty have become our new normal over the last 6 months, and even though things are easing now, we're still not enabled to live the full and social lives that we once lived, and economic uncertainty still reigns supreme, which makes it so difficult for some people given their financial situation and the level of uncertainty that's sort of occurring on a global scale. The past studies have shown that in similar disease outbreaks, over 33% of people experience extreme hardship when it comes to things like anxiety, panic, depression, and confusion, and those with a pre-existing condition are even more likely to experience these things. And although the stats say 33%, I think it's fair to say that about 100% of us feel a little bit worse or a little bit more anxious than we did this time last year. So it's really important, and it never has been more important, to keep our eye on the ball when it comes to our own mental health and the mental health of others. Even though restrictions are easing, the studies are starting to show that the long-term effects can really linger. So given this, it's never been more important to check in. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use the mental health continuum to actually check in with our own mental health and start to understand a little bit more about some of the complexities that arise when it comes to mental health. So to understand the mental health continuum, there's probably 2 really important things to consider. Number one, that it's extremely broad. So we've got 3 categories on the screen there, ranging from mental wellness to mental illness, but there are actually infinite subcategories in between and even beyond those states of mental wellness, mental illness. There's a huge variety of classifications that we can actually put our subjective experience in. The second really important thing when it comes to the mental health continuum is the fact that it's actually a sliding scale. So our position on this continuum actually changes day to day, week to week, depending on what's happening both in our external environment and in our internal world and what's happening with ourselves personally. So from those 2 important things, we can draw a couple of really key insights. Number one is the fact that prevention is key. It doesn't matter where you are on this continuum, something can always happen that shifts you a little bit further down the line. So it's really important to have proper mental health practices already in place before something happens. So you're not having to react to things when they happen, you're actually prepared and you can actively respond, or your resilience is already boosted. The second is the fact that you're not stuck anywhere on the scale. So if you're sitting down towards the mental illness side of things or something in between and you want to feel better, you can feel empowered knowing that it is in fact a sliding scale and there's 1,000 things that you can do to move yourself further towards that mental wellness side of things. So the ask here is to take some time, stop, pause, and actually check in with yourself. And we do really need to make the time for this, because in our day-to-day, when we're rushing around, so much of what we do is unconscious, and to really get into sort of how we feel subjectively, it does take a bit of a pause and some conscious reflection. So what you can do is you can either use online tools like Beyond Blue's Mind Quiz, which sort of gives you a more objective view of how things are happening. It's often difficult to feel where we are at subjectively, but getting an objective view really helps. Or we can ask ourselves a few key questions. So sit down with a notepad or something like that and really stop, pause, and ask yourself the following. So what activities are actually recharging your mental energy? What people are bringing you joy or doing the opposite, like the activities and people that are draining your energy? And then you can start looking at the time periods of when you felt most alive or when you felt sort of down, and start looking at what kind of things correlate with those time periods. So something that might be effective is looking at how do you feel this time last month or this time last year, and sort of making a catalogue of what was different during those time periods that you can look to either remove from where you are now or add back to where you are now. So now we want to start talking about some of the things that we can do daily and really frequently to boost our mental wellness. So the number one thing that I think that we can all do to boost our mental wellness and infuse our lives with meaning is develop a strong sense of purpose. So this is having a really concrete idea of what the overarching goal and kind of mission is for your life. It's essentially what is the impact that you want to have on the world. Having a purpose that involves both an aspect of service and aspects of self-actualization is something that really can infuse each and every day that we have with a sense of meaning and provide us with a lot of long-term satisfaction. The reason for this is that pursuing an overarching purpose for your life that you're continually striving towards but never fully achieving, only just pushing the boundaries more and more, actually releases serotonin in our brain. So while we're moving towards goals, our brain releases serotonin, which is a really stable feel-good chemical. When we actually achieve those goals, that releases a short spike of dopamine, and then this actually floods away. So we can't rely on dopamine because it's such a sort of strong but short-term fluctuating chemical. We want to sort of have that overarching goal that we can always be striving towards for that long-term release of serotonin and ultimately sense of well-being and satisfaction. So even though we have our long-term purpose, we do want to set goals to get there in the short term as well. So these are things that help orientate us more in terms of like our weeks and our days, and keep us kind of focused on the path towards that overall purpose. So why do we want to set goals? Like I said, it turns the what into the how. So it takes that overarching purpose and sort of that's what we want to do, and the goals are kind of like how we're going to get there, how we're going to get closer, how we're going to achieve this in a practical sense. Setting goals also increases our adherence to good habits because we make more conscious choices. If we're focused on our goals monthly, weekly, and daily, then it's going to be more front of mind, and we're going to be more conscious when we're making decisions and not just moving through our lives in a way that's unexamined and unconscious. So the third reason to set goals is because this enhances our ability to sort of show up and be present in all other aspects of our lives. The sort of release of the serotonin and dopamine that sort of keeps us feeling really kind of alive and really vital will really follow through and be a great foundation of sort of happiness for moving into, you know, your career, your relationships, and all other areas of your life. So next we want to move into some of the smaller sort of practical habits that we can actually look to implement that give us that boost of mental wellness every day. But before we do, I want to discuss 3 really important things when it comes to the psychology of behavior and the psychology of behavioral change. So number one is that a behavior doesn't have to be massive. We don't have to try and move mountains all the time, because incremental change actually compounds over time. So if we are doing really small things on a daily basis, you can see from that first graph there that it makes a huge difference by the end of the year. So I like to think of it as our goal each day is to just fall into that 1% better category rather than that 1% worse. So think about the things that you can do each day to just tip you a little bit towards that slope of improvement, and then eventually to those exponential compounding gains. Number two is that a lot of our habits are automatic, and we want to start thinking about how we can actually make them more automatic instead of always having to do the difficult work of overriding some of our conscious habits. So it's really important here to understand this habit loop from the cue to a craving to the response that we initiate to the reward we receive. Where we want to intervene to make new habits unconscious is to focus on the cue, so actually changing the cues in our environment to either not actually prompt us towards a bad habit or prompt us towards a good habit. And then the other place that we can intervene is in that third section there in terms of the response. So sometimes we can hack our response, and even though we feel the same craving, we can initiate a different behavior to get the same reward and ultimately a different and better outcome for ourselves. The last thing to understand is this inverse relationship between the amount of motivation you need to make a behavior happen and how easy it is to do. So the harder a habit is to do, the more motivation we're actually going to need. So the easiest thing that we can do and the most powerful thing we can do is just make those behaviors a lot easier to do, and then we won't need as much motivation. Because the thing is, motivation is limited and motivation fluctuates. So we don't want to be relying on that to regulate our behavior. We want to make things as easy as possible. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can do this in the next section. So what we really want to do to make habits as easy as possible is make them part of a system. So we want to actually build them into our day, and we want to tie them to transitional moments of the day as much as we can to sort of make, like going back to that habit loop, we want to control the cues in our environment to actually trigger a habit. So an easy way we can do this, like I said, make it part of a transitional moment, make it part of a certain time of the day. So I've got some examples here that I'll quickly read out. I won't go through each and every one of them, but I'll go through a few that I think are important. So number one, first thing in the morning, that's your cue. You've just woken up. What are you going to do? Stop and take time to prime your mind for the day. So it doesn't have to be long. Again, we're trying to make these things easy and reduce the amount of motivation that we need to maintain them over the long term. So just 5 minutes of something to prime your mind, some meditation, journaling, some yoga, some breath work, something like that, where you sit and find stillness before you rush into your day and you start getting jacked up with cortisol and all kinds of stress hormones that happen when we jump into things like emails, chores, our to-do list, and all that sort of thing. Just a few moments to find stillness is going to be something really important for tipping you into that 1% better category every day and send you on a path towards mental wellness. The other thing I think is really important here is habit number 4. So it doesn't have to be specifically at lunchtime, but again, that can be your cue, is to get outside as much as possible and get as much social time into your day as you possibly can. So the reason we're going outside is to get sunlight on our skin. That really helps regulate our circadian rhythm, wakes us up really well during the day, and helps us to taper off into a deep, restful sleep at night. Sleep being one of the most important things that we can actually do for our mental wellness. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but that sort of middle period of the day, if you can get out and get in the sun, that's something really important for your nighttime and your deep, deep rest. And the other thing, the social sort of side of things, 100% community and connection is the biggest. Well, I just said sleep was the biggest, so one of the biggest things that we can do for our mental health as well. A sense of community and connection is continually rated in studies as the top thing we can do for our sense of meaning and overall mental health. Another habit that I'll just call out here is habit number 6. So this one's all about carving out time in your day for your passions. So something outside of your work that you're really, really interested in, it aligns with your purpose, and it's something that sort of fills you with meaning and stimulates creativity. So whether that's reading, writing, painting, whatever, make it something creative, and again, tie it to a part of the day or a part of your week that'll sort of be your cue of when to do it. Something really important, and will add a lot of value to your life and go a long way for mental health. So this sort of mood boost guide here is just general things that you can do to actually improve your mental health that don't necessarily have to be tied to any part of the day, but I thought I would just call them out. So things like, we've been through goal setting, but let's say journaling, something really amazing to sort of put your thoughts down on a page. Stop remunerating about thoughts and leave them there. Something like exercise, obviously amazing to go out, do some really high intensity exercise and raise your level of BDNF, which is going to release a lot of positive endorphins and those sort of things in your brain. Proper nutrition, obviously really important. I've got down there as well a sense of mastery, so building skills is again something that's really important for that process of self-actualization, building your self-esteem, and your overall sense of mental health. So these are things you can do any time of the day, build them into your week, and will just sort of give you a solid uplift to your mental state over time. And it doesn't have to be long. Like if you look at this list here, you could build those things into your day in no more than 40 minutes. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be huge, but what matters is that we're just taking small steps and believing that we can get 1% better, that we can shift ourselves that little bit further towards mental wellness on the mental health continuum. So that's it for the practical tips. If you guys want more help, I 100% encourage you to reach out to any of the resources on the screen here. I've put a list of some of my favorite mental health organizations. Number one, Beyond Blue. They have incredible resources. They do so much. They run incredible events. Batia is a mental health organization that's run by young people for young people and doing amazing things. Check them out on Instagram for some cool resources. The Indigo Project is a psychotherapy company that's taking a really sort of cool, modern and contemporary, relaxed approach to psychotherapy. They're based in Surrey Hills, and I think they're an amazing company. Try out their website. They've got some awesome free resources up there for sure. The Banksia Project, they are doing amazing things in terms of their events. They run these growth rooms for people to engage with their mental health. I 100% recommend you check out their resources and the growth rooms as well. And if you want to learn more about the habit side of things, I encourage you to check out the work of James Clear. If you just Google James Clear, he has an amazing website with a series of blogs that will explain all this thinking about habits. Honestly, something that could be life-changing for a lot of people. I know it's helped me a lot. If you're interested in learning more about mental wellness resources or some of the other habits and practices that you can do to improve your own mental wellness, I suggest you check out our website. We have a load of blogs up there that are about physiology, psychology, and philosophy. And all these things, we try to tie them together and sort of showcase how they can holistically optimize your experience of life. And we do a lot of work unpacking and trying to understand the human experience and think about what things in our mind, our body, and our life we can start to optimize if we want to live at our very best. In terms of mental illness, if you are struggling, I 100% encourage you to reach out to some of the organizations that I've mentioned before, and don't be afraid to reach out. It's always better to talk. We can't get through things in our own head. It's much better to get out there, have some shared headspace, and engage with someone and just get it off your chest. So in honor of Mental Health Month, I 100% recommend you do that.